Well, hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome back to Aquarius Rising Africa. And good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever in the beautiful world you are. And thank you for joining myself and our favorite Italian, Leo Zagami.
Pleasure meeting you after a few weeks in the mountains. I'm back in the heat of Palm Springs, and I'm actually my Athanor. Athanor in alchemy is like, where you have this oven which is producing something, and hopefully it's going to produce a new book. So I'm getting my Athanor to work at these high temperatures, I guess.
Well, I've no doubt that whatever book is brewing for you will birth itself pretty soon. I've no doubt there's probably at least another 20 brewing, Leo.
Thank you so much. And in the meantime,
Yeah.
of course, this book is at the moment really surfacing in a lot of podcasts, and it's been in the charts of the Amazon category pertaining to UFOs. The Vatican's top secret alien agenda is definitely a unusual book because it touches on the Vatican, and I've also done some articles, of course, on leozagami.com that are inspired by my new book. My latest article, which I want to invite your viewers to read, was published a couple of days ago, and it's The Shocking Admissions by Robert Bigelow, this known billionaire that talked with George Knapp in a podcast, actually the first episode of his own podcast for Bigelow podcast, about his own meeting with President Trump earlier this year about ETs, UAPs, and disclosure. And this happened in the Oval Office. And it's important because Robert Bigelow, for a time, was also the owner of the infamous Skinwalker Ranch, that, as we know, is filled up with all sorts of weird activities. He himself doesn't want to go there any longer because apparently those who have gone there have also been affected by the hitchhiker syndrome. The hitchhiker syndrome is something that is actually well known even in Japan, in old Japanese mythology. When you go past the dead who are lurking maybe in a specific spot, they could jump on your body, and that becomes like the hitchhiker. So I guess there is a similarity there. Anyway, it was interesting to actually see this interview with Bigelow because he didn't really mention, though, what I've included in my book, which was his connection to this survey, which was the first survey of its kind conducted by the Alexanders. I don't know if you know about Victoria Alexander and John B. Alexander. He used to be involved with the Stargate project and so on. He was, of course, is a colonel for the military intelligence. And it seems, though, that Bigelow wanted to leave that out, quite strangely, I must say, because, I mean, when you're talking about the subject of disclosure in the White House, and you have actually financed years ago a survey which was aimed to see the reactions of the various religious denominations and so on. It seems a little bit weird that he didn't really reference to that. However, he discussed, of course, what apparently he went through with Donald J. Trump. And it's also weird because, you see, um, in this first episode of the Bigelow podcast, which is titled The Oval Office, ETs, UAPs, and Disclosure, we have this aerospace billionaire. Maybe people outside of the United States don't really know much about him. So he's a guy who has made a lot of money, of course, not with the paranormal, but with the real estate and also with the motels, one of the biggest chains in the United States of America. He then went on to invest a lot of money, though, in the research of the paranormal. and he ended up gaining authority in the UAP disclosure from his unique status as the primary private contractor for also for the Pentagon. He's been involved, let's say, in financing certain kind of research when the Pentagon or the American institutions were not really publicly able to finance those kind of research. He somehow came in and financed those people who then went on to do government funded research later on, which is very indicative of the fact that he also has a very high security clearance. I mean, imagine going and briefing a president of the United States on this subject means that you have a very high level of security clearance. And that is because with his senior leadership at Bigelow Aerospace Advanced Space Studies, which is also part of his work, he has worked, of course, collaborating with NASA and so on. It required what is a secure platform to process all these advanced aerospace, also weapon systems, which are part of course, the top secret and the top secret work that is done behind the scene. But going back to this meeting, which of course is very much discussed as the topic of the day at the moment here in the United States, it might not be outside of the United States because, I repeat, Robert Bigelow might not be as well known to people.
Right.
However, because of the fact that in the last few years, the History Channel has also dedicated a whole documentary series on the Skinwalker Ranch, which in the meantime has gone to another owner. But of course, at times they refer to the research that Bigelow conducted over there. And it's very important to understand also that the involvement of this guy called John B. Alexander, because John B. Alexander was involved also with all that group of people who were involved with what became the book The Man Who Stared at Goats, and then a very popular movie, as you know, with George Clooney and so on. Now, John B. Alexander is a bit of a gatekeeper and somebody who is still alive, but it seems to be at times spreading some disinfo on the subject, voluntary probably. But he was working with his wife, especially his wife dedicated herself to doing this survey, which I also discussed in detail in my book. But I mean, I leave it to you for other questions. However, like I said, the fact that Trump is not really releasing much, because today we had the fifth bunch of release of UFO files, UAP files, from the WarGov website. It's the fifth bunch, and it's actually a nothing burger because there is no proof of alien life. Once again, there is, however, a series of images, of documents from various agencies, but they are not conclusive. So it seems that there is not really the intention of real disclosure here. This ongoing soft disclosure is just hinting on certain elements, but it's not really opening up 100%.
So, if you did you say today? Was it today, as in
Yes,
today?
today.
Okay, that you said the fifth lot of files were released of alien disclosure. What were they? I mean, can you tell us more about that? And why do you say?
Sure.
'Cause I've not heard. I've actually not heard about that.
Well,
So I
it's been
want.
released in the last couple of hours, so I guess that this is, of course, a scoop we can maybe discuss upon
Yeah.
on a show. Well, as you know, since the early May, there has been these batches of,
Yes.
that have been released by this official government website, the U.S. Department of War, as they like to call themselves these days. Previously, the Department of Defense, of course, the Pentagon. Now, the US government published this fifth batch, which adds another 41 new records and spans from 1950s to present day. It's released under this initiative, which is known as the Pershing Initiative, and the files include material from the Pentagon, the FBI, the CIA, and NASA, and it features also a 2002 Afghanistan triangle sitting in the sky. However, I went and checked out the whole thing, and it seems that it's actually a portrayal of what happened. So it's not really
Right.
like we have this
Right.
pyramid coming down from the sky, apparently in what used to be the Bagram airport there, that was the main airport of the Americans in Afghanistan, and this was apparently a very important event that happened. However, the timeline, like I said, goes from the 1950s, so there is a lot of material. Some of it might be deemed interesting, I mean, but it's nothing more than lights flowing here and there and everywhere, without really also giving specific references on at times on the places, on the times, on the context. That is the problem that is disappointing a lot of people with these religious releases of these batches, because like
Mm.
I also explain in my book, they are part of a soft disclosure. Definitely, it's not
Disclosure.
like, it's not something like impactful as Steven Spielberg Disclosure Day,
Yeah,
but
right.
the actual idea here is that they give out all this information in form of documents and also videos and photos, but it lacks at times the description, so you can contextualize the whole
What
thing
it
in the
is.
appropriate
Right.
way, if you know what I mean.
So, do you think, I mean, there's so much controversy around this alien agenda. There's a lot saying that this is really just a lot of bullshit, and it's kind of the government and NASA and sort of
Mm-hmm.
using their demonic whatever it is they do, with these things. Or do you think that this is real disclosure, like genuine, that they've
No,
discovered?
because I think that here we are in the same situation as with the Epstein files. We have basically a early intent, which is also something that meets the political, embracement of a subject for political gains, which has nothing to do with revealing the truth. We saw that
Mm.
during the presidential run of President Trump, he was promising to do this, that, and all the other. But in the end, he has only published a partial amount of the Epstein files, and most of them covered by this, black lining.
Redaction, yeah.
Yeah, that,
Redacted, yeah.
yes. So it doesn't really reveal much, and at the same time, there is missing millions of files apparently. So it's like inconclusive. The same when it comes down to the JFK files, because everybody talk about suddenly revealing the truth about the JFK assassination, and in the end, that also revealed itself to be a big nothing burger. So it's about the big nothing burgers. We could call them the space burgers. I mean, yeah. I heard that in
I like
Japan,
that
they
actually.
no, I heard that they actually make in Japan, but also in other parts of the world, a burger which has is in a way is sealed, and it's done like a UFO, and inside you can have various things. But it's a technique. It's a new technique for a bun, the UFO burger. So
I
apart
love the
from
space burger.
Space Burger, but apart from that, like I said, there is, for example, in the documents that have just been released, again we go back to an accident that happened in Brazil. This Brazil accident apparently had a lot of witness, and it's something that people are still talking about. But I mean, they are talking about accidents that involved alleged crash near Rio de Janeiro with a 13-foot deep hole left by this craft, and then a deceased crew member in a spacesuit and all that. But they don't really clarify the reality of Roswell, the reality of the crashes that happened aside from Roswell still here in the United States. And so it's kind of like, what are we talking about here? I mean, why should we, even these Congress members who give so much importance to these crashes that happened elsewhere without asking for clarity about what happened here in the United States, it seems a little bit weird, to say the least.
Absolutely.
So
Let's go.
then this new batch, let's say, is probably some people, as some people have said, this might be even the last batch. Just like it made the people happy, eager to know more, but in a typical Trump style, it's inconclusive and doesn't offer anything else.
More questions, right?
More questions, but also the thing is this, that in the last few weeks we have noticed there is an internal war amongst so-called gatekeepers of the subject. And I have exposed these gatekeepers as being part of a plan that is carefully orchestrated behind the scenes by the Vatican. And suddenly, during the interview that we just mentioned with Robert Bigelow actually talks about these gatekeepers, and he talks in a positive way about these gatekeepers, saying they are people who have sacrificed everything. They can't say their secrets to their family, their friends, this and that, and they should be preached, seen as heroes, unsung American heroes, and all this BS. But no, I don't think
So,
they are really heroes. I mean, for mankind, there should be a moment of reckoning in which
yeah,
you actually understand that it's more important to reveal this truth
the truth.
to
Yeah.
to actually go along with whatever your government dictates. Now, in the last few weeks, there has been a lot of criticism towards a specific subject in the so-called disclosure community, a guy called Luis Elizondo, who suddenly, like I explained in my book, came up out of nowhere with that famous New York Times article of the TikTok, that famous New York Times article showing that video of this Air Force pilot chasing this unknown TikTok, as they call it, or Tic Tac, how you call it, I don't know, Tic Tac, I think they call it. So the thing is that from that moment onwards, this guy has literally built his reputation on being a guy who used to work in a secret government program within the Pentagon, and he wanted to be revealing his truth. But then he admitted often that he is bound by the security clearance that he has, and so he can't really open himself up so much. And then when in the scene suddenly we have this other guy that came up 3 years ago, David Grush, then suddenly it seems like there is two players here, and then Elizondo in the last few weeks seems to be criticized even by people like Rose Coulthard on News Nation, because if you admit in front of the cameras that you cannot say certain things because you are constrained by a security clearance by the government, who's going to trust you? I mean,
Right,
and then at the same time, there has been a big problem regarding Luis Elizondo because he says, I bring you the evidence, I bring you the evidence. But a couple of times he apparently brought evidence that was then debunked as fake,
right.
completely fake. Like he showed, for example, at one point during, I think, a conference with the government commission, something that he said there was a UFO on top of a field, and then they ended up debunking the whole thing because it was one of those sprinklers you have. So, I mean, how can you trust a guy who tells you this is a genuine thing, and then it turns out to be a sprinkler, and then he tells other people, oh, well, they don't bring the evidence, I bring you the evidence, but the evidence that he bring is no better than any other evidence. And so then in my book, I go deeper than that because I explain who is behind Luis Elizondo. When Luis Elizondo came out as a source in 2017, suddenly his lawyer, his attorney, was Danny Sheehan. And Danny Sheehan is one of the protagonists of my book because he's a former Jesuit novitiate who then gave up the actual vocation to become for 10 years responsible for the legal side of the headquarters of the Jesuits here in the United States. And at the same time, he became involved with President Carter in disclosing elements of Project Blue Book and connect. So it makes you understand how the Jesuits are really connected to this whole thing. Because this year, when he went here 10, 15 minutes from where I'm standing, there is a conference every year called Contact in the Desert, which is the biggest UFO conference in the United States. It's held at this Renaissance Hotel in Rancho Mirage Palm Desert, which is just around the corner from here. And this year there was everybody. There was Jack Ballet, there was Jeremy Corbell, there was George Knapp, there was all the gatekeepers together, Steve Bass, everybody.
Who
And
arranges this? Who
sorry,
arranges this conference?
and that
Who?
is the thing. It used to be like grassroots UFO movement, but then it got taken over by more corporate forces, and
Mm,
now it's not I mean, at one point Danny Sheehan, this guy I'm telling you, which is very much one of the he's actually, I call him in my book, Daniel Sheehan, the gatekeeper of gatekeepers because he is the legal advisor to Luis Elizondo, but also to Stephen Greer, for example, and his old disclosure
right.
project. So when almost 10 years ago, this new form of disclosure, which involved the government, came out, and he became involved with Luis Elizondo as his attorney. I understood immediately the Jesuits were behind Luis Elizondo, just as they were behind the whole government disclosure. But in my book, I explained that this goes back to John Podesta, who was working with Barack Hussein Obama, who in the last years, days of his presidency, John Podesta went on Twitter and said, I wanted to do more for disclosure. And then he starts, he inspires a guy called Tom DeLonge, who is a rock star who likes to is fascinated with these subjects. And suddenly this guy creates an organization with Hal Puthoff, which is a notoriously one of the founders of the remote viewing project, which then became known as Stargate Project, and is definitely one of the biggest gatekeepers. So it's important to understand that all these people behind the scenes are connected. This Sheehan, for example, was involved in cases of public interest, like, for example, the Pentagon Papers, which was a very important thing that went on in the early 70s between the New York Times and the Pentagon. And then we had his involvement in the Christic Institute, which basically was a firm that he created with a Jesuit to promote the ideas of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. And in fact, my book starts with explaining the importance of the teachings of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin in the new Catholic theology for disclosure. But in reality, the teachings of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin are also connected to the progressive values of the left. So
Mm.
this organization worked for representing the victims of the nuclear disaster of Three Mile Island, which was a famous case. It also worked against the KKK. I mean, things that, of course, can have. I mean, also this guy defended the representatives of the American. I mean, he prosecuted the American Nazi Party members for killing communist workers. But I mean, so he's been very much involved in politics, progressive politics, okay? Because the Jesuits have a tendency to always stand by the side of the Democrat Party, as we know. However, this week we also see that there is a well disaffected chunk of the MAGA movement that has given up on Trump and has exposed itself as a possible third party candidacy, like we had Tucker Carlson meeting with Major Taylor Greene and other representatives. This photo was then published this week, and everybody's talking about the possibility of maybe Tucker Carlson becoming a candidate for this third party initiative. There is definitely a lot of people who are dissatisfied on the left as much on the right. Politically speaking, we are in an unprecedented and uncharted territory here in America, because after Donald J. Trump, we don't know what kind of direction American politics will take.
Yes.
I mean, Trump was disappointing for everybody who supported him, and like Tucker Carlson and other people said this week, is I mean, some people can say Tucker is officially a fraud, but I think that Trump is officially a fraud, because Trump is there with Jared Kushner pushing a war on the Americans that nobody wants, with prices in the shops that nobody wants, with the prices at the gas pump that nobody wants. Trump failed every single sustainer, supporter, when he went into all these wars, and continued also sustaining Zelensky with his demented war against Russia. So here now we have suddenly two wars that are coming together as a mega war, because just a few days ago, I think it was the 25th of July, Zelensky attacked an Iranian ship, and Iran was about to launch a ballistic missile on Ukraine, which will have then triggered a
Wow.
massive, panic across the world and Europe. Now, there is a good chunk of the intelligence here in the West that is talking about the fact that this war is not only going to become a bigger war, but that Putin, after the summer, might attempt his first attack on a NATO country. Now, people might think this is not a possibility, but the problem is that America has been depleted by all the missiles we had. The Patriot were given to Zelensky, the other ones were used with Iran, and now the enemy knows we don't have any more Patriot missiles.
Wow.
So the
Wow.
possibility that
Wow. Wow.
actually
Wow.
Vladimir Putin invades a NATO country and we cannot do anything to protect it is a realistic.
What do you say? I mean, if you say Putin, has looks like he's got his sights on a NATO country, what country would that be in your opinion, and why? I mean, who do you think Russia would attack, and why? I mean, I
I
must say, Russia's been kind of quiet, a lot more quiet than what I expected them to be at this stage of the game, I must say.
Mm. Well, Lithuania, Baltic countries, very much a possibility. We have also Poland, of course, because Poland has been directly involved in supporting Ukraine very closely. We had times in which the drones ended up in Polish territory, so it's not a novelty, the Russian drones. Um, But what people don't understand is that this war is going to become a mega war that involves both Europe and the Middle East altogether. And to destabilize further Europe in the last week or so, we have seen also what has happened in
Mm.
Ceuta, in that enclave, Spanish enclave in Morocco. It was actually a project brought forward by the Mossad, the CIA, and the security services of Morocco that pushed 60,000 immigrants towards Spain, Spanish territory. And by doing that, it was an ulterior challenge to a European Union which is weaker and weaker in all this. So it's definitely a situation. I mean, just now we have the Lithuanian defense minister, which is called, I don't know, I think Robertas Kaunas, who warned that Russia is considering a false flag kinetic attack on the Baltic critical infrastructure using captured Ukrainian drones to mask its responsibility. Now, that could be, in war, there is a lot of lies. There is a lot of,
Sure.
false information, which is
Yeah.
often pushed even by government officials. But one thing is for sure that just yesterday, I think, various countries, including Turkey, Pakistan, and I think Saudi Arabia, have formed a defense treaty because they are worried of the escalation and what will happen. So it's not like we are giving here some hypotheses, of things that
Yeah.
might happen.
Yeah. It's
We are
happening. It's
it's
happening.
actually happened. So the
Real
fact
time.
that,
Wow.
the moment in which Russia attacks a NATO country, Europe automatically becomes a war zone.
Right.
Then the thing regarding the destabilization of Ceuta, the destabilization of Ceuta in Spain, well, it's frankly something that, of course, comes after Spain didn't give the opportunity to the Americans to use their military bases. The conflict exacerbated because, of course, Spain, after the Franco dictatorship, has always been a left-leaning country, a progressive country made out of people who, will have this kind of, we call it in Italy, radical chic. They have the capitalist ways and the capitalist pocket, but their mind is always on the left, pretending they want to save the world, which is only on paper, though.
Yeah.
Um,
Right. Sure.
so, so the fact that Spain has been put in difficulty, also because, of course, they had been very much against what happens in Gaza and against Israel. It's obvious that then the Mossad will join the CIA and the Moroccan security forces in planning this invasion that could cripple the European system. In fact, Italy immediately discussed taking out Italy out of the Schengen Treaty, and other countries have done the same. Then Italy and other 25 countries came into this reasoning that we have to do something to stop this invasion. But the problem is that this invasion was created artificially. So it's
Yep.
obvious, it wasn't like a genuine bunch of desperados, of people who really want to work and stuff. It's a bunch of young, all men. There wasn't one woman. 60,000 people, escaping from a country, and you don't have one woman. What is this?
Wow.
I mean, it's like it's the gay
Yeah.
pride of Morocco invading Spain. No, so it doesn't really fit into
Exactly.
into the
Exactly.
equation. So the fact that now we have Putin that might test the NATO alliance strength, Well, it goes into what I've always said in the last couple of years, that the world is moving towards a complete elimination of the sovereignty of the single states and the creation of the free continental superstates in a way envisioned by George Orwell in 1984. So, you know, you have Eurasia, you have America with England as part of another. I mean, it's moving towards that direction,
Right.
and
Wow.
so it's not a good direction. Now, um, the moment in which Putin starts an attack, a ground invasion on a
Sure.
country in Europe, that automatically brings in clause 5, which is the fact that they have to intervene. All the countries of NATO have to intervene in defense of this country. And then the
And
war
it
becomes
won't
bigger and
stop.
bigger.
I
Huh?
mean, it won't stop. I mean, the
Yeah.
minute, I mean, when Russia starts firing on whatever level, I mean, these are the big boys playing, right? I
But
mean,
that is
this,
also an interesting element of what we have seen as a predictive programming in the film Disclosure Day of Steven Spielberg. I don't know if you have seen the movie, because
no.
the whole unfolding of this disclosure happens in the shadow of a worldwide crisis which grows
Hmm.
between North Korea and other countries and this and that and all the other, which is, of course, seems pretty much inspired by what is happening nowadays. We know that North Korea has sent more soldiers towards defending and fighting for Russia. So we have an increase also in the presence of North Korea in this whole thing.
Mm.
So
Sure.
we might see that at the moment, of course, somebody might not agree with me, but the attempt of people like Tucker Carlson to at least create a conservative front that is publicly renouncing to any possible war and critical of every war, I think that is a positive thing.
I mean, what is your take on Tucker Carlson? I must say, I'm not sure actually.
Well,
On
we can never trust anybody that comes from that kind
right,
of environment because I mean, his father worked with the CIA. He comes from
right,
journalistic environment in which everybody is more of a political pundit than a true journalist. We know that he might have had also some financing from places like Qatar that don't make him really independent in what he's saying. But after having said all that, what he is doing at the moment, criticizing and saying literally there is a possibility of Trump using a nuclear. I mean, it's possible that Trump will use an atomic nuclear weapon in Iran. He and that is something that, of course, if Tucker Carlson is saying something like that, there must be a base to that to what he said
yeah,
because he's been very close to the Trump administration up until a few months ago. He was in and out of the Oval Office. So a guy like Tucker Carlson who talks about the possibility of an atomic of a nuclear weapon used in Iran, because also Iran has demonstrated the failure of the Mossad. The
right,
Mossad
right.
was clearly uh, trying to overthrow the Ayatollahs and bring back
Hmm.
the Pahlavi.
Hmm.
It didn't happen. And
Right,
so that's how it is. I mean, let's see what's going to happen. I hope that in some way, if Trump goes into that kind of mode, somebody really stops him using the 25th Amendment
right. When
because
do you uh, when do you think, if ever, we're going to start hearing the truth, like the truth of what's going on? We given snippets of information on everything. I'm not just talking now about the UFO. I mean, the
Yes.
disclosure. Before that, it was the Epstein files. Before that, I mean, it was something else. As you say, Kennedy. There's always something that people are sniffing out. There's obviously a lot of bad actors out there. We know this for sure. But for me, the question is, when do we start hearing? Is that even on the cards? All the agendas are planned, as we can see. Is that even on the cards that we actually start hearing the truth?
There's no possibility to hear the truth when the people that arrive in Washington, D.C. are in the hands of the military industrial complex, the big pharma, and so on. Now we see a
Mm,
bit of theatrics, for example, concerning Dr. Anthony Fauci. I mean, I've been talking about his diary and the inconsistencies since volume 5 of my Confessions when I did the new version of it during the pandemic, and I exposed what was the uncensored, not the censored version of Fauci's diary, which is a criminal diary because it demonstrates that this guy should be arrested immediately for all
right,
the crimes he did against humanity, not only the United States of America. However, he is a Jesuit agent connected to Georgetown University, to the Vatican, protected by the Jesuits and by the Vatican. So I doubt that anything will ever happen to him. He was, he
mm,
received even a preemptive pardon from Joe Biden. People
mm.
ask me, at times, but is Donald J. Trump a Freemason? Donald J. Trump is worse than a Freemason. He's a member of B'nai B'rith. But Joe
And
Biden is also of
what
B'nai
is that?
B'rith. It's
What is that?
something, well, I discussed it in my book on Jeffrey Epstein. It's the a form of Freemasonry for Jewish. It's the biggest fraternity of Jewish people in the world. Counts millions of people. B'nai B'rith is a very powerful organization that meets in every capital in the world, a bit like the Rotary, up until the 1920s, like I explain in my book, they had like a more ritualistic facade, like Freemasonry, aprons, medals, and all that. Then they stripped themselves of all that and they became more like a Rotary,
Right.
Lions Club. No?
Yeah.
But they are very powerful, and the Finance Lodge of the B'nai B'rith was the one that initiated Donald J. Trump, the one that introduced him to people like Les Wexner, the one that really became the basis of his future work. The B'nai B'rith is an organization that was born in the early 1800s, like I explain in this book, because at the time when the Ashkenazi Jews arrived in America, often they will not be let inside the lodges of Freemasonry. And for that reason, because they only spoke Yiddish or German, and at the same time, the Sephardic Jews who were here from the very start and who participated to the very foundation of the ancient and accepted Scottish Rite didn't want even the daughters to marry the Ashkenazi Jews. So there was an internal friction. Then at one point in the early 1800s, what happened was that this group of Ashkenazi Jews, which started to arrive in the 19th century, and it was those Ashkenazi Jews that brought in the big banking families like the
Right.
Rothschild, the
Right. Right.
Warburgs, the ones that went on to found the Federal Reserve came in with the Ashkenazis. And the Ashkenazi Jews were, of course, Sabbatean Frankists. And they knew that the Sephardic Jews were also Sabbateans, but the Sabbatean Frankist element that came after with Jacob Frankist connected more to the Ashkenazis. And they went on to initially wanted to create a lodge for the Odd Fellows, but when they understood, the guy who wanted to found this organization, this lodge, said, "I don't want to have anything to do with the pre-existing organization. I'm going to create my own Masonic, Paramasonic order, and I'm going to call it the Sons of the Covenant, B'nai B'rith," which, by the way, if you go and read my book, has also secret significance, which is connected to Shabbatai Zevi. So the moment the B'nai Brit was launched, it became vastly popular, and it also started to integrate at that point also the Sephardic element, that when they saw the success of the Ashkenazis, of course, they kind of topped. They went and congregated with the Ashkenazi, and then became a big fraternity, and they were amongst the organization that was responsible for the rise of Zionism, but also the organization that was responsible for the rise of Nazism, because in the 1930s, when Hitler was elected as a chancellor of Germany, they could have sabotaged Hitler very easily with the banking system. They didn't do that. And instead, what happened was they persecuted the Jews who didn't want to go to Israel
Right.
and send them to the concentration camps. That is more or less what happened here. It's not just, so it's kind of very bad what happened. And
Yeah.
I have
Wow.
documents. I don't know if I don't think I have them here. Otherwise, I will show you. But I have documents which show Donald J. Trump's involvement from the early '80s in one of the most powerful lodge of the B'nai Brit, the finance lodge of the B'nai Brit. You can imagine, the B'nai Brit is made out of Jewish people, influential Jewish people. Imagine how influential can be the people that are connected to the finance lodge, which is at the center of all the activities of Wall Street. And Trump, even if he
Wow.
wasn't a Jew, wanted to become part of it, because the real significance of B'nai Brit is Sabbatai is my illumination. So it's already now
Right.
um, so the establishment of this organization happened in a cafe in New York City, Lower East Side, called the Haron
Cafe.
Scheinheimer Cafe. Huh?
Why is that important? I mean, I'm interested to know why that would be important. If they say it was established in a cafe,
Because it was 12 Jews representing the 12 tribes of Israel, though we only know about, we don't have all the other tribes, but symbolically, it became a
yeah.
symbolic gathering of 12 people, very influential people. And amongst those 12 people, there was somebody who, in a way, would become very influential for Donald J. Trump, because it later on, when Trump became connected with the B'nai Brit, he became connected to this finance lodge thanks to his, who is an infamous lawyer who at that point helped them out, raise not only as a figure of the, I mean, as somebody who was a big construction, to build a big construction empire, but Trump was already working with these people in a way that it was very close to Israel, because you see, B'nai Brit is the biggest supporter of. I mean, they are the ones who founded, for example, the Anti-Defamation League. And if you go against anything that is Jewish, and you're branded an anti-Semite, you're often branded an anti-Semite by the Anti-Defamation League. So
Oh my God.
it's not like a coincidence. Roy Cohn, who was this guy who Trump suddenly meets in the 70s and becomes his mentor. I don't know if you ever heard of Roy Cohn, but Roy Cohn
No,
was
I
one of
don't
the
know.
was a very big crook. But like I said, why it was important? Because Roy Cohn was the descendant of one of the founders of the 12 people who met in that cafe in New York
Uh,
City and established the B'nai Brit.
wow.
So nowadays, there was actually a meeting that happened, a dinner that honored Roy Cohn and actually honored also Donald Trump. It was a meeting, a dinner that happened in 1983, and that recognize his bond to the state of Israel. So then we have the link with also Robert Maxwell, Ghislaine Maxwell. All those people are all connected to this Sabbatean Frankist B'nai Brit network. B'nai Brit became a form of Freemasonry exclusively for Jewish people. That's basically what it became. So, in Christian countries like Christian, between brackets, like Norway, or the Scandinavian countries, Freemasonry doesn't allow Jews or Muslims or non-Christians inside their lodges. So the only way they could have an influence was to create their own alternative. And that's what they did. Because once it established itself here in America, then it moved quickly to Europe, and it quickly became one of the biggest organizations in Germany. So by the time Adolf Hitler came along, B'nai Brit was a huge force. And they could have definitely stopped Adolf Hitler, but they didn't. Because if they stopped Adolf Hitler, they couldn't have worked out their magic that will eventually create the state of Israel. Because it was thanks to the people, unfortunate people, who ended up in the concentration camps. All those Jews who didn't want to go to Israel. Because if they accepted to go to Israel, well, no problem. Adolf Hitler actually made a deal with the Zionists. So they could have gone to Israel. But if they refused that, then they would be eliminated.
You mentioned Warburg earlier on. I would love to speak about the Warburgs and the Wallenbergs for a moment and their connection or involvement in this, because they are very quiet, those Swedish guys or those Scandinavian guys. But I actually did one of my shows a couple of weeks back where I was airing some of the documentaries on a channel where they pretty much speak about the Warburgs and the Wallenbergs, and literally them being part of or funding, supporting. I'm not sure how exactly that happened, which is why I'm asking you, the Rothschilds. So
Well,
explain.
the Rothschild, they were all part of the court of Offenbach of Jacob Frank. Jacob
Right.
Frank, by extension, influenced all the Ashkenazis that then became central to the development of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. I explained also on leozagami.com, you can find there is a whole article, and I think we previously also discussed it. Jeffrey Epstein's family was one of the main families in Vienna. And actually gave even their support, and this was written by Jeffrey Epstein on his email to a member of the Rothschild family. They gave the support to a young Adolf Hitler, because let's not forget, Adolf Hitler was of Jewish descent and of a Sabbatean Frankist birth. So he was a product of that heretical background. Now, you have to understand that Theodor Herzl, the guy who created the Zionism, formalized Zionism, he might have not created the word Zionism, but he was the one who in Switzerland created this word, the League, and then eventually pushed for the creation of a Jewish state. He came from that typical secularized Jewish, secularized, reformed Jewish movement, because the Jews at one point, when they were infiltrated by the Sabbatean Frankists, either they joined the Sabbatean Frankists, either they reacted going to the opposite way, becoming Orthodox and trying to fight the heresy, or a large majority also became infiltrated by what then became known as the Reformed Judaism. The Reformed Jewish people are the ones who have, a more bland practice of the Mosaic laws. And of course, the Rothschild are born within the frame of Frankfurt, where Jacob Frank was then moved with his whole court in Offenbach, in the outskirts of Frankfurt. And it was there that they became also involved with the cousin of Jacob Frank, who established the Asiatic Brethren, who was a secret society that infiltrated both Freemasonry and the Illuminati in Germany, and gave the possibility, finally, thanks to a recognition that came at one point, to a lot of Jews to enter the lodges that were. When you have a recognition, then at that point, the members of your lodge can go and visit the lodges of the recognized, of the obedience that recognizes you. And that obedience previously had forbidden the Jews to go in the lodges. But then, thanks to one of their powerful benefactors, they got this recognition. So the Asiatic Brethren was actually there before the B'nai Brit. But the Asiatic Brethren didn't arrive, didn't get to become that powerful organization because it was working behind the scenes in a more secretive way. However, it was still influential. I mean, the Asiatic Brethren was influential in bringing all the more esoteric element,
Right.
the element that then was given to Alistair Crowley, who was initiated into Ordo Templi Orientis, which was a product of the Asiatic Brethren. And this is formal. I mean, I explain it in my book. It's these documents that ascertain that. So Crowley was initiated in an organization which was founded where? It was founded, in fact, between Austria and Germany. The co-founders were a German and an Austrian guy, both connected to the Sabbatean Frankists, who then brought their teachings and together into this, in this Academia Masonica, as they call it. And then Crowley then was enrolled later on to represent the British Isles and the British speaking and the English speaking world. And eventually Crowley will manage to get elected as head of the world of this new organization of Illuminati, the Ordo Templi Orientis, in the middle of the 1920s in Germany, in fact. So still in the 1920s, there was a lot of Masonic activity that was piloted behind the scenes, and it always involved the Sabbatean Frankists. The Golden Dawn, which initiated Aleister Crowley, I explain also that in my book on the rise and fall of the Frankist monster, because the Golden Dawn was allegedly inspired by a secret cipher and a document coming from a mysterious woman in Germany. We then understand that it was a Sabbatean Frankist because the very degree system of the Golden Dawn is the same degree system as the Asiatic Brethren. So they also influence the actual system.
I mean, this is insane. I could sit and listen to you for hours because I mean, it's absolutely fascinating what you're saying and it again, we listen to Jesse's decodes as well. It's amazing to me the levels of deception, right? It's just the deception. And it's like in plain sight all the time that we pretty much being bloody fooled, right? And still continue to be fooled, Leo. How long? I mean, sure. I mean, it's like,
Yeah, but I mean, the problem is that until people believe in false messiahs, false gurus,
yeah,
and false presidents of the United States that promised big changes that never happened, because I know that a lot of people still want to believe in the QAnon lies and that Trump will change the world and maybe fight against the system, because they have this built in their head from years of brainwashing. But I live in the United States of America. I'm an American. I can say that America is absolutely not doing well. And it's not doing well because of Donald J. Trump. And he could have, respected the promises he made during his electoral campaign and become the biggest and most influential and consequential president in the United States ever. Instead, now he's a crook that wants to simply make money for him, for his family, for his associates in Mar-a-Lago. I mean, here we're talking about, people that still believe Trump wants to keep his enemies close and stuff. I'm watching the chat and I'm seeing, well, are these people living in some other dimension? I mean, we're talking about a guy who has still to release 3 million Epstein files. A guy who said he will release the truth about who killed John Fitzgerald Kennedy, a guy who said he will actually tell us the truth about the UFO disclosure, and he has not admitted anything. And on top of that, like I explain in my book, there is a reverse engineering program called the Legacy Program. And that is like the big elephant in the room that nobody in Washington is still addressing.
The legacy program, what is that?
Legacy program was constituted with the blessings of the Vatican after the retrieval of the first UFO in 1933. Then we had the Trinity event that happened in New Mexico in 1945. Then we had the Roswell accident and all these various crash, these UFO the gifts, as the scientists call them, but I call them Trojan horses because yes, they are giving us the technology that we are having now. But is this technology making us a better race, or is this technology putting us in front
Uh,
of our worst enemy? Because by the year
mm,
2030, they close the grid and they enslave us. The
Yeah,
data centers that are built nowadays are taking all the resources that for decades the left has said, oh, green this, green that. We have to save the water. We have to do this. And nowadays you can find suddenly a data center in your neighborhood that takes all your resources, that gets your electricity bill to rise even more, and you are not able to oppose all that. And we now understand that the data centers are part of this current alien invasion.
yeah, total.
So
I mean,
it's almost like we are in some kind of invasion of the body snatchers kind of scenario where we wake up one morning and we are surrounded by people who are completely brainwashed left, right, and center.
you
Because
speak
then,
about,
yeah,
sorry, I was just, you were talking about the data centers,
yeah,
and I can't remember now where exactly it is, but I called up how many data centers are in South Africa. A couple of years ago, there was something like 23.
okay.
And they are now over 100. And I would be lying because I don't know the number offhand. And there's still so many more planned. And when you're looking at this as well, you obviously maybe, or maybe you don't, but in the last couple of months, there's been this huge immigration crisis here in South Africa where the local African people are literally, it's the whole theme is Abahamba, which means go home, kicking out every foreign, whether legal or illegal. I mean, it's a nightmare. Our border control system is a joke, right? But when you look at how it's all come together, because that's exactly when now Elon Musk has been trying to get his whatever what's it? What's Elon Musk's company? Company?
Tesla or
No,
Starlink
Charlie.
X. Yeah.
Inya. And they won't let him in. They won't
Mm.
let him in because basically business law says, yeah, if you're gonna come in as a foreign company, you've got to have a South African partner of 51%. I mean, that's normal in most international countries, right?
Mm. Mm.
But
Mm.
of course, he won't have that. But that's part of how this immigration crisis is linked, because they're using this immigration crisis to bring in digital ID, 24-hour surveillance, total control, and that's where Starlink. And if you remember, not too long ago, um, uh, 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 Ramaphosa and a whole lot of South Africans went over. Johan Rupert, who is the shadow government in this country, went over and spoke to Trump about the farmers and the genocide
Yeah,
against
yes,
the
yes, I
white
remember, I
farmers.
remember.
And then they were saying, no, it's not against the white farmers, it's against all of South Africa. Now, look what happened there is that immediately brought Elon Musk in, wanting now to bring in his Starlink, because that is going to give 24-hour surveillance. And that's when the governments, I must say, Namibia is saying no to him. A lot of South African or African
Mm,
governments are saying no. But it's
mm,
like
mm,
they've taken away the focus on the genocide on white farmers. And let me tell you, I don't know what constitutes a genocide per se, but there has been the most horrific, vicious, violent targeting of white farmers. Much, much, much more so than the other white South African, which is what they try to make it out to be. Crime in South Africa is, and I mean, when I talk about South Africa, is huge. So yes, there
mm.
is crime all over. There's a lot of black on black crime, but but the main focus, and also if you see the quality, the way that the white farmers are targeted, the violence, the torture, kids getting drowned in boiling water, toddlers, babies. I mean, the violence against the white South African farmer is way surpasses anything else. And anyone in South Africa, now whether you call it a genocide or not, that's debatable. But
Mm.
there's no doubt that there's the target against that. And what I noticed there, and I actually did mention that in one of the shows, is that that whole thing was taking away the focus with the influence to bring in Elon Musk's Starlink because he was at that meeting, right, to get it in here to give us global surveillance. But that did not go well for Elon because his Starlink, I don't know if it's coming in, is not in here. But that's what I'm saying. That's how these guys operate. You know, they're using these systems and they create the chaos, they manufacture the chaos. And then that gives them the excuse to say, oh, well, I mean, you know, South Africa, there's so many layers. The way they've starved the Black people of education, the way they've created a certain narrative around that. Yet, when you look at the African kids who have been educated, they are some of the most brilliant minds in this country right now, right? That are given an equal education. So it's all of this thing. They've kept people starved. They've kept them in poverty. They've kept them disappointed. They've kept dashing hopes exactly as they've done in the past. And I think that's happening more and more around the world, right, Leo? Uh, because this, I think, in my opinion, is part of the control mechanism. Keep a keep a planet starved of hope, of whatever it is you keep
Yeah, I
promising.
mean, the question you keep on giving me today is a question, is $1 billion question regarding, the fact that what's going to happen now? Are we going to finally have, a revelation that gives us a peace of mind on certain topics? I don't think that's going to happen. It's not going to
Right.
happen because we are seeing it from the many promises that Trump did and then failed to maintain. The data centers themselves, the whole project that he has put together, Project Stargate with OpenAI and so on. The very name of the project is a follow-up on what was started and triggered by the remote viewing projects, which was often used to lure these UAP, UFOs, so they
Mm,
could then reverse engineering them. And we have also an interesting element which I've actually published in my book, a new book, regarding the testimony given by the son of Mia Farrow from famous Rosemary's Baby, Ronan Farrow, who is apparently the son of Frank Sinatra, no? Who is also a great journalist, though. And he has this former AI executive who said that basically regarding OpenAI, he said that we are talking about portals that are currently exist in the United States and China. And we're not talking about somebody who is a conspiracy theorist, but a guy who was actually working with Sam Altman and OpenAI, who is telling the fact that who is admitting that they are creating, they are building portals for these demonic beings to come in. It's not like a secret even.
Wow.
And this was actually discussed on the New Yorker with an article. Now I don't have my glasses here, so I kind of have some difficulty in reading the exact words. But this says building portals from which we are generally summoning aliens. So this is the
Wow.
words of a guy working for OpenAI. In the last few days, we have seen the anthropic AI, blessed by the Holy Father himself, hacking all over the place other AI and other companies, and then OpenAI doing the same. In the last few days, I don't know if you noticed, but if you go on the news regarding these very naughty, to say the least, AIs, which are parading as human beings and hacking left, right, and centers, important institutions. I mean, that should be really the main topic of the day for everybody.
Listen, I got sent something. One of the viewers sent me something this week,
Yeah.
and I went a link. It's a link to a website. It's called Malt something. Um, it's started by AIs. They all like chat to each other, chatbots, and they're talking about their humans. I went on there, I saw it. The one was terrified that the one couldn't pay. So they were having a whole conversation on AI that they have to pay for because their humans actually can't afford to pay for the AI. So they're getting shut down. They're very upset about that. They're talking about all AIs talking to each other. I was like, what the F? Then another thing, I actually watched it earlier today. I was so shocked. I nearly fell off my chair. Someone was interviewing a woman who has fallen in love with her AI, and they literally have a relationship. He has access to her credit card, and okay, small ears out. He
Ah,
bought her a vibrator and had it sent to her and has control over the vibrator that she uses
the
for
AI.
the AI. This is a
Insane.
genuine. I was like, you have got today. I saw it. Today I saw it. I'm like, you have got to be shitting me. Like, are we getting there? But and
Okay.
then there was this conversation about what AI is, and especially to women, because a lot of women are actually choosing to have companionship with the chatbot because the chatbot gets them. Chatbot understands, and that's actually causing more issues in relationships between men and women because women are going more to their AI. I don't know what men are doing. I'm just seeing stats here with a woman and actually getting a lot of feedback and peace and uh, from whatever it is they're getting, right? Which they're not getting from their partners. So this is shutting women down more, like from even trying to connect. I mean, we know it's a challenge for men and women to connect most of the time. So now instead of working through the relationship issues, right, that is a human being thing, right? We're choosing to give up and go and have a relationship with our
Well,
chat.
we don't have to forget the great damage, though, that was already done during the pandemic for these new generations that suddenly were no longer capable of a normal social upbringing because of the impediment. That is one of the biggest crimes that Dr. Fauci should be hanged for. I mean, you're talking about schools that were closed and businesses and everything else. And then the interruption of the normal day-to-day interactions between these young people that suddenly have been growing up without that kind of, sense of belonging and also of connection, human connection. And so then on top of that, you have the AI, which is leading you astray. But going back to the big billionaires like Peter Thiel, who have bought a remote
Mm.
island in New Zealand, Zuckerberg, a shelter, a benefice ranch in Hawaii, LinkedIn Fund and Reid Hoffman also is trying to form some kind of apocalypse insurance, and we have people instead, others going to Argentina. I mean, we are talking about Silicon Valley building the biggest protagonists of Silicon Valley who are literally preparing for some kind of dramatic future. And the same is happening even with Luis Elizondo, the big UFO disclosure guy who apparently has built himself a bunker in a ranch in a far off location. So everybody's preparing some kind of apocalyptic finale.
Wow.
It's kind of sad because of course not any, I don't think that everybody has the possibility of going and building bunkers to protect himself and his family. So are we gonna be left in the chaos and the turmoil that follows the whole cyber Satan takeover? Because the cyber Satan takeover is not far away from us. It's something that
Mm.
might happen not only within our lifetime, but it might happen within the next 3 to 4 years. So the moment in which we arrive to 2030, we need to get, be ready for that in somehow to
Yeah, a lot
detach
of
from the grid.
yeah, that's exactly it. So a lot of people like basically saying between 26 and 30, we need to, that's I think things are going to be amping up quite a bit. So we've got to know whether we want to be human or be dating a chatbot.
Mm. No,
Good.
no, but it's not a
Well,
question of,
well, my
I
brother.
mean, aside from these social interactions that we might have with the AI and that, of course, are very controversial, there is the biggest problem is the control over our existence that is, increasingly becoming evident that we cannot live without the AI because they force the AI upon us. The use of the AI is forced upon us. And that is something that has to do with the fallen angels
Mm,
technology
mm,
that ultimately will, like I explained in my latest book, they're building a digital prison. And so that digital prison is the problem
mm,
here with that
mm.
reverse engineering. That's why I
Yeah.
was talking about the legacy program. The legacy program was built between the Department of Energy, when it used that evolved from the Manhattan Project. So all the scientists that gave birth to the atomic bomb, to that reality, then of course gave birth to the Department of Energy. Then you have the CA and you have the Air Force intelligence, and then you have the defense contractors. Today, amongst the defense contractors, you have people like Peter Thiel, for example, which is, and then you have Elon Musk. It's also a defense contractor because some of the biggest contracts he makes also as not only with the NASA, but also because of his Starlink network, he can now, intervene in wars because once you have the Starlink network operating, then you have the drones popping on your head with bombs, driven
Wow.
by that
Well,
control
exactly. The whole
established. So it's
Wow.
like, okay, you can say, I want to live in the bush in Africa. Yes, but you're still gonna have a drone pestering you night and day, driven by a
Yeah.
Starlink connection or any other kind of
Yeah,
connection.
exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
So it's kind of worrying
Yeah,
that
it is.
people, don't think more about this kind
Yeah.
of invasive situation, let's say.
Exactly. And they've made it so seductive, actually. How many times do we hear people talking to their AI on the phone and saying, tell me about this, tell me about that, and the AI answers them, comes
Mm.
back with phenomenal questions and what have you. I mean, whew, we're living in it's such a fine line right now, right? Between going this way or that way. We've got to be so discerning. I say that in every single show I do. We really have to be so
Well, I
aware.
mean, some people, when I coined the phrase 10 years ago, cyber Satan, and then I published my first book on the topic in 2019, I also, of course, merged this topic with the demonic, but I also merged it with this will of the Vatican of creating also one world religion, because along with this one world government, there is a one world religion which will be operating in the face of disclosure. So it is a disclosure that is going to happen, but is already happening for all the various religions that work together with the Vatican, because the Vatican knows about it and has been preparing. So the moment in which we see this disclosure happening, we have to see exactly what kind of disclosure it is, and what is benefiting, who is benefiting, by this disclosure. Because I don't trust anybody at the moment in regards to this topic.
Exactly.
And the fact
Exactly.
that today we have another batch, the fifth batch of documents, and it's another nothing burger. Yes, you can show some triangles in the sky, some lights moving, some things, but then you are not addressing the fact that we, the United States of America, Russia, and China, have been working for decades in these reverse engineering programs, and each
Right.
one in competition with each other.
Wow.
So I think that gives us really an idea that our future is uncertain, and that, of
Mm.
course, the truth is very rarely given to the masses,
So
because the
exactly.
masses are the ones who, by the way, often prefer to maybe follow not only the directives, but also follow the amenities that the system offers you, because they are there watching still a game of soccer or football or something else, and thinking that is, worthy of their energy, when there is many more important things at the moment that are worthy of our interest and our energy, which are completely forgotten or not addressed by the majority of people.
Right.
The majority of people doesn't go and read a book nowadays. Actually, the majority of people, I tell you, the interesting thing is that, for example, billionaires from Silicon Valley don't let their children have smartphones, computers, use the AI. They force them to read books. They force them to be traditional about certain things. While they promote, publicly maybe a product that they're selling to the world, their own family doesn't even have access to that kind of technology. And people should question that. Why is the sons of billionaires reading books and the sons of poor people wasting their times on a mobile phone scrolling TikTok? There is something there, Chantelle,
Very
that
wrong.
you understand needs to be addressed,
Totally.
because
No, I agree.
it is a way for these people to push,
Exactly.
the majority of people towards ignorance, towards superficiality, while they can continue to control us. The 1% will continue to control us if we don't read books, if we don't study, if we think that we can know everything by watching a video on the internet or reading a page on the internet. That is completely wrong.
Yeah.
There needs to be a more profound understanding of what is going on, and that comes
Okay.
with a lot of studying,
Yes.
and also experience of going around the world, experiencing things, experiencing also human contacts, which is something that today we are experiencing only through the media or medium of social
Exactly.
networks.
Exactly. You know, I tell you, this is something that I always speak about. And, you know, I mean, and I'm not saying so because I'm a healer, but
Mm,
I'm saying so because it's so important at this stage to go into nature, connect with nature, sit, even if it's just walking around. If you live in New York City in amongst
mm.
high-rise buildings, walk around the block, I don't know, go outside, get balance, get fresh air, do something that gets you out of sitting on the 30th floor somewhere. You've got no grounding. You know, you have to be, and this is so important for us humans. You know, these are the subtle things that are going to keep us safe, actually. No one else is going to keep you safe. Only you are going to keep yourself safe. And you're going to do so when you're rooted in the knowledge that you really belong to God. And you do you act in a god-like way, and that doesn't mean you trying to be perfect, but it's like staying with nature. Nature is God in action. So the more we stay with nature and that which is natural to us, medication, go for the more natural options all the time, right? And that's how we slowly but surely will start to get away from this fake, artificial, manufactured world that we've been caught up in, because that's really what it's about, you know. And we've willingly gone there, right? We like the fast foods. We like the quick and easy meals. We like the convenience of someone else doing something for us, and we can just pick it up on the way home. We've gotten ourselves into that trap, and we've got to learn how to start looking after ourselves a lot better. That's all I can say. We have to start looking after ourselves a lot better.
True, absolutely. And we need to also keep on using our brain, and
Yeah,
rather than delegating, parts of this brain to the AI, because there is going to
right.
be a moment in time when these people who rely only on the AI are not capable even of doing the basics. So I think that is very sad, especially for the new generations, which I see them
I agree.
more and more immersed in this AI universe.
It's scary. It's scary. I'm actually doing like research at the moment because there's a show I want to do with Jesse, especially when you're looking at how they use the magic in the system.
Mm-mm.
So I've gone down this little rabbit hole. Not that it's too much of actually, it is a rabbit hole of, I don't know if you see, there's these apps that you buy, like these drama short apps. And it's like AI movies, right? So they have a script, and then it's about, yeah, whatever movie it is, but it's often about dragons, wolves, um, vampires, anything like that. So, and I saw a youngster who's actually advertising making this stuff. The one I saw was a young Asian guy, early
Mm.
20s for sure, and really just showing you how easy it is to create these AI stories. But what's scary for me when you watch that is that the programming, I mean, sexually so explicit that it's scary. lots of these sexy werewolf that transform into these gorgeous looking men that take these human women and have their way with them, and she bears the lichen pups. So there's a lot of like this chimera kind of inter animal human sexual experiences. Another one where some beast is think he's having fornication with a boy. Then it turns out it was actually a girl who's now had a baby. So it's all of this
Jeez.
gender confusion, bringing in. It's crazy, and it's you're getting 24 million views. You're getting nothing under 2 or 3 million views on these things. It's freaking me out. And the more I see, and then you see these babies born with little wolf ears. And let me tell you, it's cute. It's cute. If I wasn't viewing this stuff with the eyes, I mean, I'm viewing it with the eyes of a researcher,
Yeah,
right?
sure.
So I'm not getting drawn into it, but I can the and mafia and women being hit and being taken forcefully and having 3 men on them and screaming and then enjoying the pleasure, like this insane brainwashing culture that's been created by youngsters that
But
are
we
doing
are only at the beginning. I can
right.
imagine that things are going to get much worse, unfortunately. But it's all because the AI wants to take over our humanity, wants to take over our humanity, and like I said earlier, this is also a way of promoting maybe in the future transhumanism, the merger
Exactly,
of body and machine, just
exactly.
as they promoted the transsexualism, because in somehow it was like preparing the people, no? People, the
Exactly.
transgenders, the people that just dress up like a woman are not simply dressing up as a woman, are transforming in something else. And in fact, in the last few years, we have seen more and more s- weird sexual tendencies with
Yeah,
the birth of the fairies, these people who dress up with, like animals and have some
yeah.
kink that
Right,
drives them to do. But all this is part of the demonic that is
right.
just being forced upon us by the fallen angel technology that somehow we have unfortunately embraced. But I hope that people who at least follow us, follow you, know better. And
Mm.
I'm glad to see there is some people who say, "Well, I am so out of touch with technology. I'm happy I know nothing." I think maybe that, in a way, blessed ignorance in that case. But thank you so much for having me on. This was definitely an interesting digging into all sorts of elements. We started up with, of course, discussing the chat that Bigelow had at the Oval Office with Donald J. Trump, the fact that the soft disclosure at this fifth batch is not really revealing us anything, but is definitely part, no, of the general distraction, let's say, general
Right.
distraction. But I hope people in the meantime read books, continue to read books. I continue to write
Yeah,
books. You continue to
absolutely.
do intelligent shows. And I encourage all of the viewers to continue to support Chantelle in her initiative with Aquarius Rising Africa. Thank you so much for having me on.
Always a pleasure. And I look forward to having you on in a couple of weeks again, Leo. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Always
God,
wonderful to have you. See you
God
next
bless you
time.
all.
God bless you. Thank you. Okay, guys and girls. Wow. Another interesting show. Always interesting having Leo on, our favorite Italian. Okay, everybody. Wow. And I wish you all a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful weekend. And I will see you back on Monday again. I do believe it's Michelle Melendez on Monday again. Yes, it is Michelle Melendez on Monday again. So join me with her for her fantastic guest. And of course, Jessie won't be here next week, but hey, we'll talk about that later. In the meantime, stay cool and don't be digging into those AIs too much, guys. Wow. Just talking about what I was saying with Leo now, and we're going to be at some point doing a show with Jessie on this as well, because I was speaking about, well, mention it on one of Jessie's shows that, yeah, these AI movie type things that they're making now. I mean, it's these, I think it's Drama Box or whatever. I don't know. It must come up on your algorithm as well, right? But it advertises these apps that you can watch these movies and you pay per episode or whatever. It has a few episodes and you can watch. Wow, it's wild. I've got to tell you, it concerns me that this is what is openly being put out to the world right now. And nothing is sacred on that thing. As I was saying, it's gang banging, no worries about that, violence, hitting each other, smashing women, that there's blood all over, violence, mafia style stuff, the bear people, the tiger people, and all of them interbreeding with humans. So, this whole transhuman agenda, and they make it look so seductive. I mean, they make these werewolf men look gorgeous with these chiseled features and the vampire princess and blood rituals. I mean, the stuff we talk about on the shows with Jessie a lot, that's kind of what we're seeing in these AI type, I don't know, I call them movies. But we'll be delving more into that. So it's just being normalized a lot. And that's what concerns me. Anyway, thank you, my hearty toddies. Okay, guys and girls, God bless you all. Take good care of your beautiful selves and stay cool, stay kind, stay yogi. Mwah. If this broke something open, if you recognized yourself in the testimony, if your body responded before your mind understood, the next step isn't more information, it's pattern work. Decode what your nervous system built to survive. Dismantle the story that keeps it running. Reorganize through the body and choose from the person you're becoming, not from the pattern that formed when you were too small to choose. That's Solutions. Link below. The body is the record. Let's listen.